So what is research? A lot of the words you've already identified. Systematic. There's an order to it. You're not just going to do whatever you think you should do. You're going to follow a process. It's like cooking food. You have a recipe and you follow the recipe. It's a scientific study, and then you'll see a lot of them are about establishing new information, getting information and facts for new knowledge, improving understanding. So there's really two sets of things. One is the science, which Willie talked about, and the other is the knowledge. And that's what research is using a scientific process to improve your knowledge. Now this question I get quite a bit. I'm sure it's in Eileen's head of what is the difference between monitoring and evaluation and research, right? So we have a research department and we have an M&E department. And the question is, why does Bethany sit in research and why does Eileen sit in M&E, and what is the difference? So generally, research is thought about generating new scientific knowledge, and your goal is to write a paper. So I'm going to learn something from my study and I'm going to publish my results so other people can learn from what I've learned in my research. And we think about monitoring and evaluation as more for decision making. So I need information. I'm sure Eileen can tell you I need information fast. I'm sure people are coming all the time. I need to know yesterday how many people came to our program. I need to know yesterday if their health outcomes were good. And the goal for that, people often say, is to report to stakeholders. So this graphic I found where people talk about the difference of research and evaluation and M&E. And to me, I really think any research that we are doing in Partners in Health and any research that we are doing for the Ministry of Health should really be somewhere in between. So I don't want to do a research project on something that will not improve care in Nkwabu. There are so many interesting questions out there, but the only questions I am interested to answer are questions that relate to my population where we are serving. Okay, so we don't want to be asking questions that don't apply to the population here. And we really want to prioritize questions based on what we think the needs are here and what we think the gaps are here. So for example, I am sure in the midwife program, you have identified some challenges. And you probably have some very good questions about what are the causes of those challenges and what could be solutions to those challenges. That is the research we should be doing. We should not just be doing research because we think it's interesting and fun, but it really should be addressing what we think our issues are at our sites. Another way that I've seen M&E and research distinguish from each other, again, M&E tends to be very fast. And you have to give information fast to the decision makers so they can make decisions. Because of that, you cannot spend a lot of money to give the information. You need to get it fast and turn it around fast. Research tends to take a little bit more resources. We go a little bit slower. We focus more on the process. We make sure we have a good question. We make sure we have a good study design. We make sure we have approval from the ministry to collect data. We make sure we have approval to publish the data. And so research requires more resources and it takes more time. But we're also more confident in the results. Because we've taken more time, we've been more scientific, we are more confident that what we see is the true thing that is happening in our community. So M&E tends to be fast to provide information to decision makers, and research tends to be a little bit more slow. I would guess for the M&E department, when they get data, they try to return the information within 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. For research, it's usually about 6 months, 1 year to get the project going, to collect the data, and to give the information back, because you need to be more methodical along the way. You need to have good methods. Now, you'll see here it's a continuum. There's not like a line here that says that's research and that's M&E. It is a continuum. My job before this was in M&E. Eileen's next job may be in research. You know, there is a continuum, but this is generally how we think of it in terms of information and resource. So skills, we've talked about what research is and systems and methods and logic and organization. So think about people you know who are doing research or research you want to do. What skills do you think you would need to be able to do it effectively? So what skills do you want to learn or do you think you need in order to be able to do research? So data analysis. What skills do you think you need in order to do research? Interpretation, which are two totally different things. You know, I'm a statistician. I was taught to do data analysis. I don't always understand how to interpret the results. Data collection. And specifically, when we talk about methods, we usually also talk about study designs, right? And then appropriate analysis or appropriate statistics. What else? Writing. So I always say I speak two languages. I speak English and I speak research. Because writing in a research way is like learning a new language. Writing scientifically is like learning a new language. And so learning how to write that way is a really important research skill. It's like learning a new vocabulary. And a lot of what we're going to do in the next few weeks is to build your scientific vocabulary. You know, what does generalizability mean? What does internal validity mean? So to strengthen your scientific writing, you have to have a good knowledge of these different scientific terms. What else? Presentation skills. Literature review. So how do I find articles? When we talk about literature review, it's about how do I find other papers that relate to my topic? And how do I read them and understand the information so that I know what is known and what is not known? What else? Being able to communicate your results is a very important part of research. If you're just finding answers, but you are not able to tell other people what those answers are and why it is important for them to know it, then you shouldn't even do research, right? That's the most, to me, the most important piece is communicating to other people your results. So there is a long list of skills you could use if you were doing research. So reviewing the literature, designing studies. So how do I choose if I want a cohort study or I want a case control study? Managing studies. So I've been doing research now for maybe 10 years. If you asked me to manage a study, it would be a disaster, okay? It's a very specific skill to be able to coordinate ethics clearance, to be able to coordinate data collection, to be able to do a budget are very special skills that you have to learn. Collecting and cleaning data, analyzing data, interpreting results, writing up your results, sharing or disseminating or communicating your results. And then finally, a very important skill is how do you read research and use that to change what you're doing. Okay? So I think if Alice can read papers on other studies about social work and improve the social work program based on what she's read, that's a very important research skill. Okay? How do you read what other people have done and decide if it's what you want to do for your program? We will not do all of these for the seminar series. Okay? For this series, what we are focusing on is reviewing literature. We'll talk about study design. So we won't actually be designing studies, but we'll talk about the different study designs that people use, why they chose to use that study design, when you would use it and when you would not use it. We will talk about how to incorporate results into practice. So when you're reading other papers, what can you learn from them, and how can you change your programs based on what you have learned? And we will talk about interpreting results. So when someone gives me a table, how do I know what the message in that table is? There's, 100 numbers there. What are the most important things for me to interpret, to understand what they're doing? And those are going to be the focus for this seminar series.